The security camera footage would later show exactly what happened at 3:47 a.m. On that Tuesday morning, a blazing hot pink Lamborghini rolling through the Willowbrook Estates gates like a neon nightmare, its custom wrap gleaming under the streetlights. But what the cameras couldn't capture was the look of pure satisfaction on Marcus Chin's face as he parked his $250,000 middle finger directly in front of the HOA president's driveway. 3 months earlier, they'd called his beloved 1998 Honda Civic aesthetically unpleasing. Now they were about to learn that revenge, like justice, comes in many colors, and many colors had chosen the brightest one money could buy. Marcus Chen had been having the kind of morning that made him grateful for small mercies. His coffee hadn't burned. Traffic was light, and for once, he'd remembered to grab his security badge before leaving his modest 2-bedroom house in Willowbrook Estates. The subdivision wasn't fancy, but it was his. Every square foot of it earned through 16-hour days debugging code and 3 years of ramen dinners. He pulled his 1998 Honda Civic into the driveway, the engine giving its familiar wheeze as he turned off the ignition. The car wasn't much to look at: faded silver paint, a small dent in the rear bumper from a parking lot mishap, and an odometer that had rolled over 200,000 miles twice, but it ran. It was paid for. And it had carried him through college, his first job, and now his life as a senior software engineer at a tech startup that was actually turning a profit. The manila envelope tucked under his windshield wiper made him pause. His name was typed across the front in official-looking font. Mr. Marcus Chen, 1247 Oakwood Drive. Inside, on letterhead that proclaimed Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, was a formal notice that made his blood pressure spike with each word. Asterisk, Dear Mr. Chen, it has come to the attention of the Willowbrook Estates HOA Board of Directors that the vehicle currently parked in your driveway, 1998 Honda Civic, license plate, Tech Guy, does not meet the aesthetic standards outlined in Section 12.3 of the Community Covenants. Specifically, the vehicle's condition and appearance are deemed detrimental to property values and the overall visual harmony of our neighborhood. You have 30 days to remedy this situation by either removing the vehicle from visible areas of your property, replacing the vehicle with one that meets community standards, performing repairs and modifications to bring the vehicle into compliance. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $50, legal action, and potential foreclosure proceedings. This is not a request. Sincerely, Victoria Pemberton, President, Willowbrook Estates HOA. Marcus read the letter twice, then a third time, each reading making the words more surreal. He'd bought his house 18 months ago, had attended exactly one HOA meeting where he'd been ignored while they debated the appropriate shade of beige for mailbox posts, and had generally kept to himself. His car was clean, registered, and parked legally in his own driveway. Aesthetic standards, he muttered, looking at his Civic with new eyes. Sure, it wasn't a BMW or a Mercedes like the cars in the driveways of the bigger houses up the hill, but it wasn't an eyesore either. The sound of a car door slamming made him look up. Victoria Pemberton herself was walking toward him, her heels clicking against the asphalt with military precision. She was exactly what central casting would order for suburban HOA president: blonde hair in a severe bob, yoga pants that probably cost more than his monthly car insurance, and a smile that could freeze lava. Mr. Chen, she called out, her voice carrying the kind of artificial cheer that made Marcus's teeth ache. I see you got our letter. I got it, Marcus said, holding up the envelope. And I have to say, I'm a little confused. What exactly is wrong with my car? Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her eyes swept over his Civic like she was documenting evidence for a crime scene. Well, it's quite obvious, isn't it? The paint is faded, there's visible wear, and frankly, it just doesn't fit with the image we're trying to maintain here in Willowbrook Estates. The image. Marcus felt his jaw tightening. It's a car. It's legal, it's insured, and it's parked. In my driveway, Mr. Chen, Victoria said, her tone shifting to the kind of patient condescension usually reserved for small children and the mentally impaired. When you bought your home here, you agreed to certain standards. We've worked very hard to maintain property values, and vehicles like yours, she gestured at his car like it was a rotting corpse. They send the wrong message. What message is that, exactly? Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. That we don't care about excellence. That we're willing to settle for ... less. Marcus felt something crystallize in his chest, hard and sharp as broken glass. "Lest I'm sure you understand," Victoria continued, her smile snapping back into place. 30 days, Mr. Chen. I'm confident you'll do the right thing. She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Chen, I should mention that I've been in contact with several residents who share my concerns. You'll find that fighting this would be ... unwise." Marcus watched her walk away, her heels clicking out a rhythm that sounded suspiciously like a countdown. Timer, 30 days, $50 a day in fines. Legal action, foreclosure. He looked at his Civic again, this time seeing it through different eyes. Not as a reliable car that had served him well, but as a symbol, a line in the sand, a test of whether he was going to let someone else define what was acceptable in his own life. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed his best friend from college, Jake Morrison, who'd made a fortune in cryptocurrency and spent it on toys that would make grown men weep with envy. "Jake, it's Marcus. I need to ask you about that Lamborghini collection of yours." "Marcus, my man, what's up? You finally ready to stop slumming it with that Honda?" "Actually," Marcus said, looking at Victoria Pemberton's perfect landscaping and pristine mailbox, "I'm thinking about making a statement. Tell me, what's the most obnoxious color you can wrap a car in?" Jake's laugh was like music. "Oh, brother, what did someone do to you?" "They called my car aesthetically unpleasing." The pause on the other end of the line was pregnant with possibility. "Marcus, my friend, I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation about revenge." And neon pink. As Marcus hung up the phone, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his startup's first major client signing, the electric thrill of a plan coming together. Victoria Pemberton wanted aesthetic standards. He was about to give her aesthetic standards she'd never forget. The Honda Civic might not meet their requirements, but he was willing to bet that a neon pink Lamborghini Huracan would exceed them in ways they'd never imagined. 29 days and counting. Jake Morrison's warehouse looked like a fever dream of automotive excess. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, and cars Marcus couldn't even identify sat in climate-controlled perfection. Their paint jobs gleaming under LED strips that made the space look like something from a sci-fi movie. The smell of leather, rubber, and money hung thick in the air. "Holy shit, Jake," Marcus breathed, following his friend between rows of million-dollar machinery. "When you said you collected cars, I thought you meant like ... 3 or 4. 17 at last count," Jake grinned, his cryptomillionaire. Casual uniform of designer jeans and a hoodie that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent, making him look like he'd wandered out of a tech conference. Turns out, when you get in early on digital currencies, traditional investments start looking quaint. They stopped in front of a midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of sapphire. "This beauty, here, she's my baby. 630 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, and she purrs like a mechanical angel." Marcus ran his hand along the car's flank, feeling the perfect smoothness of the paint. "She's beautiful, Jake, but I need something that's going to make Victoria Pemberton's perfect little world explode." "Ah, right, the aesthetic offense." Jake's grin turned predatory. "Follow me, brother. I've got exactly what you need." They walked to the back corner of the warehouse, where a car sat under a custom cover. Jake pulled it away with theatrical flair, revealing what looked like a Huracan's evil twin sister. The base was the same sleek, aggressive, undeniably Lamborghini, but the color scheme was something that belonged in a nightclub. "Designed by someone having a fever dream, neon pink?" Marcus asked, though the answer was obvious. "Not just neon pink," Jake corrected. "This is what happens when you give a rap artist a limitless budget and tell them to create something that can be seen from space. The base is hot, pink, but watch this." He flicked a switch on a remote, and the car's surface seemed to come alive. LED strips embedded in the wrap began to pulse and shift, creating patterns that moved across the surface like electric lightning. The pink shifted to magenta, then to electric purple, then back to a pink so bright it made Marcus's retinas ache. Color-changing electroluminescent wrap, Jake explained, clearly proud of his creation. I had it custom made for a music video that never happened. The rapper decided it was too extra, which should tell you everything you need to know about how gloriously obnoxious this thing is. Marcus stared at the car, feeling something between awe and terror. Jake, this thing is ... A rolling middle finger to good taste. A four-wheeled assault on the concept of subtlety. A mechanical manifestation of pure spite. Perfect. Marcus. Finished. It's absolutely perfect. Jake's laugh echoed through the warehouse. I was hoping you'd say that. Now, let me guess. You want to borrow it for your little HOA war, if you're willing to let me. Brother, after what you told me about this Victoria woman, I'm not letting you borrow it. Jake's grin widened. I'm giving it to you. Consider it a gift from one code warrior to another. Besides, I've got 17 other cars, and none of them have ever had the chance to be part of something this beautifully petty. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Jake, I can't accept. Yes, you can, and you will, because somewhere out there is a middle-aged woman in yoga pants who thinks she can push around a guy who once debugged a system crash at 3 a.m. while running on nothing but spite and energy drinks. She has no idea what she's dealing with. They spent the next hour going over the car's features. The Huracan was stock under the hood 630 horsepower of Italian Furibut. Jake had added some custom touches that made Marcus's head spin. The sound system could probably power a small concert. The LED wrap could be controlled from a smartphone app, and the horn had been replaced with something that played the opening notes of La Cucaracha in a tone that could wake the dead. There's one more thing, Jake said as they finished the walkthrough. You're going to need somewhere to keep this thing while you're plotting your revenge. Can't exactly park it in your driveway until you're ready to make your move. Marcus had been thinking about that. Actually, I have an idea. My startup just signed a lease on a new office space. Big parking garage, lots of security cameras. I can keep it there until it's showtime. And when exactly is showtime? Marcus pulled out his phone and checked the calendar. Victoria gave me 30 days. I'm thinking I wait until day 29, let her think she's won, and then you show up in a car that looks like it was designed by someone who thinks the aurora borealis isn't bright enough. Exactly. Jake handed him the Kiza key fob that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Marcus, my friend, you're about to become a legend. But are you sure you're ready for the fallout? Because something tells me Victoria Pemberton isn't going to take this lying down. Marcus thought about the condescension in Victoria's voice, the way she'd looked at his car like it was contaminating her perfect neighborhood, the casual cruelty of threatening to take his home over a vehicle that had never hurt anyone. Let her bring it, he said, feeling the weight of the key fob in his palm. I've been debugging other people's problems my whole career. Time to create one of my own. The drive back to Willowbrook Estates in the neon nightmare was surreal. Marcus had never driven anything more expensive than his Honda, and the Lamborghini felt like piloting a rocket ship. Every surface was leather or carbon fiber. Every control felt like it had been machined by angels, and the engine sounded like the automotive equivalent of a dragon's purr. He kept the LED wrap on its most subdued setting, merely hot pink instead of the full light show, but even so, the car drew stares at every traffic light. Kids pointed from back seats, other drivers pulled out phones to record, and one guy in a pickup truck gave him a thumbs up and shouted something about living the dream. As he pulled into the secure parking garage at his office building, Marcus allowed himself a moment of pure satisfaction. In 28 days, Victoria Pemberton was going to get the shock of her perfectly manicured life. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Victoria Pemberton. I wanted to follow up on our conversation today. I hope you're taking our notice seriously. The community is watching. Marcus looked at the message, then at the $250,000 instrument of revenge surrounding him. He typed back, "Don't worry, Victoria. I'm taking it very seriously. You're going to get exactly what you asked for." He hit send, then leaned back in the Huracan S racing seat, watching the LED strips pulse gently across the dashboard. Victoria wanted aesthetic standards? She wanted visual harmony. She was about to discover that sometimes the most beautiful thing in the world was the look on someone's face when they realized they'd pushed the wrong person too far. 3 weeks into his countdown, Marcus discovered that Victoria Pemberton didn't believe in waiting for deadlines. She believed in psychological warfare. It started with the lawn inspector who showed up on a Tuesday morning measuring the height of Marcus's grass with a ruler and taking photographs like he was documenting a crime scene. The citation arrived that afternoon. Grass exceeds maximum allowable height of 2.5 inches by 0.3 inches. Fine, $25. Wednesday brought the mailbox inspector, who determined that Marcus's standard black mailbox didn't match the approved beige specifications outlined in subsection 4.7 of the community guidelines. Another $25 fine. Thursday was the driveway inspector, who cited him for oil stains that were actually shadows from his Honda's undercarriage. Marcus had to get down on his hands and knees with a magnifying glass to prove to the inspector that there was no actual oil. But the citation had already been written, $25. By Friday, Marcus realized he was dealing with someone who had weaponized bureaucracy into an art form. His phone rang as he was reviewing the latest batch of violations. Apparently, his garden hose was improperly stored because it was visible from the street. Chen residence, he answered, not bothering to hide his irritation. Mr. Chen, this is Victoria Pemberton. Her voice carried the same artificial sweetness, but with an undertone of steel. I hope you're having a productive week, reviewing our community standards. Victoria, Marcus said, leaning back in his desk chair. Through his home office window, he could see his Honda sitting in the driveway, looking increasingly like a symbol of defiance. Let me guess, you're calling to tell me about more violations you've discovered. Oh, nothing like that. I'm calling because several residents have expressed concern about your attitude toward our community guidelines. We're having an emergency HOA meeting tonight to discuss your situation. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Mark's situation? The Marcus Chen problem, Victoria said, and this time she didn't bother with the fake sweetness. 7:30 Community Center. I strongly suggest you attend. It would be unfortunate if decisions were made about your property in your absence. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment, then opened his laptop and pulled up the HOA bylaws. He'd been a software engineer long enough to know that every system had vulnerabilities, and legal documents were just another kind of code. 2 hours later, he'd found what he was looking for. The Willowbrook Estates Community Center looked like it had been designed by someone who thought beige wasn't quite boring enough. Folding chairs arranged in neat rows faced a table where Victoria and for other board members sat like a tribunal. About 30 residents had shown up, most of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus walked in at exactly 7:30, carrying a folder thick with printouts and wearing his best "I'm about to ruin your day" smile. Mr. Chen, Victoria announced as he took a seat in the front row. How good of you to join us. We were just explaining to the community about the, shall we say, challenges you've been presenting. Challenges. Marcus opened his folder casually. I wasn't aware that owning a legal vehicle constituted a challenge. A murmur ran through the room. Victoria's smile tightened. Mr. Chen, your vehicle violates clearly established aesthetic standards. Does it? Marcus stood up, his voice carrying easily through the small space. Because I've been reviewing our community covenants, and I found something interesting. He pulled out the first document from his folder, Section 12.3, which you cited in your letter. States that vehicles must meet reasonable aesthetic standards consistent with property values. The key word there being reasonable. Victoria's board members exchanged glances. Mr. Chen, I think you're misinterpreting. Oh, I'm just getting started, Marcus continued, pulling out more papers. See, I also found the voting records from when these aesthetic standards were implemented. November 15, 2019 passed by. A vote of 5-2, with 847 eligible voters in the community. The murmur in the room grew louder. Marcus could see people pulling out phones, some recording, others texting. Only 7 people voted on rules that affect 847 households, Marcus said, his voice rising. That's less than 1% participation, which, according to Section 3.2 of our bylaws, makes any vote invalid unless there's a minimum of 15% participation. Victoria's face had gone very pale. Mr. Chen, you're engaging in frivolous legal technicalities, am I? Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a photo. Because I spent some time this week documenting aesthetic violations throughout our community, would you like to see them? He didn't wait for an answer. Here's a pickup truck with rust spots on Maple Street. Here's a sedan with a cracked windshield on Oak Drive. Here's an SUV with peeling paint on Pine Avenue. All visible from the street. All failing to meet the aesthetic standards you're so concerned about. The room had gone completely silent. But here's the interesting part, Marcus continued. I ran the registration numbers. Every single one of these vehicles belongs to someone who voted in favor of the aesthetic standards rule, including ... He looked directly at Victoria, a certain 2018 BMW X5 with a significant dent in the rear bumper and what appears to be dog scratches on the interior door panels visible through the window. Not very aesthetic. Victoria shot to her feet. This is harassment, Mr. Chen. Taking photographs of private property from public streets, which is completely legal, just like you've been doing to my car for 3 weeks. Marcus turned to address the room. I have 17 more photos of vehicles that fail to meet the aesthetic standards being selectively enforced against me, all owned by board members or their supporters, which raises an interesting question about equal enforcement under our community covenants. An older man in the third row stood up. Are you saying the board is playing favorites? I'm saying the aesthetic standards rule was illegally implemented, selectively enforced, and hypocritically applied, Marcus replied. And I'm prepared to file a lawsuit citing all 3 issues if this harassment doesn't stop immediately. Victoria's face had cycled through several shades of red. Mr. Chen, this is me giving you one chance to back down gracefully, Marcus interrupted. Withdraw the citations, acknowledge that the aesthetic standards rule is invalid, and we can all go back to our lives. And if I refuse, Marcus smiled, thinking about the neon pink Lamborghini waiting in his office parking garage. Then, in 9 days, when your arbitrary deadline expires, I'm going to show you exactly what happens when you pick a fight with someone who actually reads the fine print. He packed up his folder and headed for the door, the room buzzing with excited conversation behind him. As he reached the exit, he heard Victoria's voice, shrill with fury. This isn't over, Mr. Chen. Marcus paused in the doorway and looked back at her. No, Victoria, it's just getting started. Outside in the parking lot. His phone was already buzzing with friend requests and messages from neighbors who'd recorded the meeting. But the text that made him smile was from Jake. Saw the video on Nextdoor. Holy shit, brother. You just declared war on the HOA Karen. I'm so proud. How's the countdown going? Marcus looked at his Honda, then thought about the mechanical weapon of mass aesthetic destruction waiting for him downtown. 9 days to go. Perfectly. He typed back. She has no idea what's coming.